Because one of the things my Tantra teacher always says is like, if someone claims to be able to open your Kundalini, to awaken your Kundalini. So you might see like Kundalini awakening workshop, or yes, someone is like, no, you can come to me, I can awaken your Kundalini, then run for the hills. Hi, my name is Dika, and you are listening to my podcast where I give you a look into my life as a former business consultant, now Tantra teacher and speaker. If you're interested in self-development and really receiving the education that you should have had growing up, specifically around your femininity, sexuality, love, and relationships, then you found the right place. It's here where I share my life's journey, which once was heady, numb, unorgasmic, and basically me trying to be like a man, all while shaming and blaming anything that actually made me a woman, just blindly following the path that society set out for me, to ditching my imagined corporate career, moving my ass to Bali, setting up my business, meeting and marrying my soulmate, and becoming a Tantra teacher. I'm now on a mission to make all of this feminine and tantric wisdom that I've gathered over the past years modern, down to earth, and easily applicable. And I work with you, smart, intellectual, successful, strong, independent woman, to balance out your powerful masculine side with more softness, surrender, playfulness, love, and pleasure. Basically, alivening and juicing up your daily and relationship life. If you're curious on how to work with me, then check out all the information in the podcast description. And for now, welcome to a new episode. So yes, the topic of full body orgasms. I believe it will be a juicy podcast episode. Just a little note or something to be aware of is that yes, I can dive into this topic and talk about it for hours. It's very fascinating and interesting. And that's also what I'll be doing. I'll be diving into giving the theoretical background, specifically based on tantric wisdom and principles when it comes to this principle of full body energy activation or full body orgasms. However, in the end, it's something that you can't fully and will never fully understand with your mind, because this all happens in your body. And in general, if you think about the best orgasm that you've ever had, you most likely were not thinking and thinking and thinking and thinking. You were not in your head. You were fully connected to your body, fully in the space of surrender and let go, into almost a free fall into mystery, in this moment of like nothingness. And all those principles, and that will be similar for wanting to experience full body pleasure, full body orgasms. So if you're super keen and curious, especially at the end of this podcast, I highly recommend either working with me or coming to one of our retreats or trainings, because in the end, this is something that you learn through transmission, from actually getting, like, you will see a demo of some sort, you will be in the space, you'll get to practice it, because in the end, this is not something that you just understand and now you're like, aha, now I'm going to do it. But nevertheless, I think you will learn a lot from listening to this podcast episode. And specifically where I would like to start off with is giving a little bit of a history on my own pleasure story or my own orgasm story. This is actually something that I often share about in the group programs I've run with women. I actually share my orgasm story, and I invite women also to either write that down for themselves or dare to share it either with the group or with someone, a close friend or something, and to just in general start talking more about the concept of sexuality and orgasms, because it's one of those topics that we don't get taught a lot about. And so we learn from it either through porn or through some of the sexual partners that we've had. However, most of those partners actually also don't have any clue. And so they've also learned it from somewhere else, or porn, or another partner, which also didn't know anything about it. So it's basically based on a foundation which is very shaky and almost this loose sand, which is why actually, I believe Tantra has some really beautiful, powerful foundational knowledge to offer and wisdom to offer when it comes to this topic, which hopefully, will really inspire you to see it as something new, as something more magical, because actually orgasmicness and orgasms and the orgasmic energy and your sexual energy is one of the most powerful energies that you have access to within your body. However, for many, this is the energy that lies dormant somewhere. resting far in the depths of our being, and we never touch it. And I believe we miss out on not just like full body pleasure, but also just this full body pleasure, like aliveness feeling anywhere else in your life. So, to zoom back, when I was about 15 years old, I remember like there's a few things that I remember about my own like orgasm journey and how I started learning about this. Around 15 years old, I started bleeding, got my period for the first few times. And that's also for women when basically, because your menstruation cycle is your sexual cycle. So that's when your sexuality and that journey starts with really this hormonal journey that's happening on a monthly basis inside of your body that also influences the different flavors of sexuality that you unlock and get in touch with, because every single season, every single phase of your menstruation cycle is connected to a different sexual archetype in the sense of a different flavor of your sexuality. And so one thing already to understand is that and I talk about this a lot, but still it stays hard for people to grasp until they have the experience of it, is that sexuality, when I say the word sexuality, I don't per se mean sex. I mean, and this is like when we talk about sex or sexuality or sexual energy, the first thing for many of us that pops into our mind is this thing that we do behind closed doors in the bedroom where we lock our genitals together and potentially have some fun and maybe want orgasms, maybe not, but that thing. Well, actually, your sexual energy and your sexuality can also be called, it's your instinctual nature. It lies at the very root of your body. So it's connected to the root chakra, which also has to do a lot with the topic of safety and a topic of feeling grounded and anchored and safe and secure in this life. And that the key for that is actually connecting to your sexual energy, to your instinctual nature, understanding that at the very primal root of who you are, is this being that basically landed on this earth to procreate, to create a new version of themselves. So basically evolution and biology design you in such a way that will, like, basically evolutionary perspective is just like, I need more humans. I need to make sure that my species keeps on going. So there is this very primal force within you that has that intention. Now, what we learn in Tantra specifically is to not deny that. So in many other belief systems or like spiritual paths or however you want to call it, even religions, we stay away from that primal force and we're like acting like it doesn't exist. And that's when we get cut off from our primal force. So that's actually the most powerful like motor that we have. And also then we start repressing it. And then it starts turning into like dark, shady behavior that runs underneath the surface that really hurts. And therefore, this topic of sexuality often comes with a lot of stories where people got hurt in some way or another or mistreated each other. And it can get really dark. Now, what we say in Tantra is that no mud, no lotus. So we basically invite awareness and attention into the mud, into the very core and root of who we are, so into the instinctual nature. And from there, by honoring these more muddy aspects of ourselves, these more like really primal instinctual nature aspects of ourselves, we invite that like nutrition, that foundation, so the flower can blossom and this lotus flower can get created. In Tantra, we fully dive into this aspect. And specifically what we do is we bring awareness and consciousness into it. So it's not that we just like, oh, fun, let's like play around over there. No, actually we bring more presence. This space, when I say consciousness or awareness, is this space where if you've ever like had silent meditation practice of some sort, basically, or mindfulness practice, you're invited to like focus on your breathing, to notice the breath going up and down, and just trying to stay present with that. And every time you're noticing your thoughts going somewhere and creating stories, whether that's like things that you have to do in your day or a past memory or something in the future, then you slowly just invite back to your breathing, and you train this skill of presence, of trying to stay in the moment, trying to stay connected to your body, because your body is always in the present. That's why in Tantra we use the body a lot, and we treat the body as like this divine portal into so many lessons of growth and learning and self-development, because like the body is always present. So the more we connect here, the more we are in this moment, and we're less in our mind over here trying to think and analyze and understand everything, and just dive into the transformational portal that we can by accessing and connecting to your body. So yeah, we bring that presence, that awareness into these aspects, into not only the root that's like more of our sexual instinctual nature, but also when it comes to the second chakra, which is our emotional center, another big topic where we tend to like not be taught anything about and shy away from, and really missing out on, again, some like really vital movement and like energy force that lies dormant within our emotions, because emotions are like, again, a primal force. You're actually born with a number of key emotions, which are there to actually, like biology, evolution put them there. They serve a certain purpose to keep you safe and alive, because that primal aspect, that instinctual nature of your body, is designed to stay alive and to create a next version of you. So that is at the very root of who you are. And to start understanding that sexual energy is linked to your instinctual nature, to this really primal, like, this force of wanting to procreate. And as I mentioned, for women specifically, that is linked to your menstruation cycle. So every phase of your cycle will come with a different kind of like feeling of that sexual energy. For example, in your menstruation cycle, we tend to be almost like, don't touch me when it comes to, wanting to have sex or running sexual energy, or we're more inwards, and we're more almost like we start anew. It's like a start of a new cycle. So we are often more young in our sexuality as well, almost like we're back to being a teenage girl. And so slowly, when that goes on, we move to the spring season of your cycle, where you become more like, I just want to flirt, I just want to play, I just want to kind of tease. Like that was when we were younger, also more the like how our sexuality evolved. And then slowly we move into ovulation phase, like the summer season of the cycle. And that's when you are most fertile. So that's when the body will boost this like sexual drive, this like, okay, this is the moment, because this could be the moment that we procreate. And so the flavor of like, often that's the moment when women are like, just like, press me against a wall and take me now, kind of that feeling, that flavor, that archetype. And then slowly we move more into the luteal phase, the autumn season of your cycle. And that's when, again, the flavor of sexuality like changes more into wanting to heal together, or really deeply connect and slow it down, and being able to reflect more. And it has a different flavor of wanting to be intimate until we start again. So this life force energy we also call sexual energy. It can also be called creative energy, and it can also be called your Kundalini energy. So this is another like aspect I'll be diving into this topic to explain more about this, because maybe you've heard about Kundalini, maybe you have not, but I come across quite a lot of people that have heard something about it, something around like Kundalini awakening, and that Tantra is like can awaken your Kundalini, and what does it exactly mean? And what I see happen a lot is that people go to specific trainings and directions, which like they could be labeled as Tantra, but they're not specifically. And it can be like some people have been quite shocked when it comes to this, and maybe are a little bit scared. And so I'll be giving some pointers and hopefully demystify a little bit what it's about. So if you're feeling called to work with this like principle of wanting to activate more energy in this Kundalini energy and full body orgasm, that you have kind of like a clear guideline on like, okay, like how does that work? What is recommended? How do you see that? I think that's really important. Because one of the things my Tantra teacher always says is like, if someone claims to be able to open your Kundalini, to awaken your Kundalini, so you might see like Kundalini awakening workshop, or someone is like, no, you can come to me, I can awaken your Kundalini, then run for the hills. That's what Sarita, my Tantra teacher and the Tantra school that I work with and learn with, says, because that's often not the approach approach that is most sustainable and most safe. And so I'll explain a little bit more about it. But yeah, she always says like, if someone says I can open your Kundalini, just like make sure to get out of there as soon as possible, because you don't need anyone else to do that for you. And you don't want it to be opened, like forced open. You want it to unlock that energy and that power within your own timing whenever you're ready for it. And there are some key components that are necessary for it to be a really beautiful process, a really enlivening process, instead of one that can be potentially really confusing because so much energy gets unlocked and you don't know what to do with it. So yeah. Okay, but to go back to my history of when I was a teenager, I started bleeding. So that's also when I first remember, like I started self-pleasuring and trying to explore my body and touching myself. And I have these memories where I would be able to like get really, really excited, like almost like I was climbing this mountain of pleasure, but then I got always stuck at the peak, almost like I couldn't let go. I couldn't surrender. And so I really struggled to have orgasms. And also I didn't know exactly what it was or how the feeling was supposed to feel. Like I had friends who were saying that they were having orgasms. Also, some of them were already making love with their boyfriend. And so they were saying that they experienced this orgasmic feeling. And so what I got from their description was like, I don't think that's what I am like feeling or what I am reaching. So I don't think I can have orgasms. And so I remember like playing around and kept practicing, and it was really fun. But over time, it got more and more frustrating because I was building up so much energy and so much pleasure, but I wasn't releasing it. And that can lead to, sexual frustration. And so that turned into me thinking that like, okay, there must be something wrong with me. My body is broken, which is super sad. And I'm just hugging my 15-year-old self and wish she got taught these things back then, but at least I know them now. And so we went on our own little healing journey when it comes to this. And from there, at some point around like 17, at that time, I actually moved to New York, to the States, because I used to play field hockey and I got a scholarship to a university in New York to play field hockey there. And so that's a very different culture. And it was like a big group of girls because it was like, I don't know, over 20 or 25 of us in this field hockey team. And a lot of them were already like a lot older because I started as a freshman and there were like, old levels. So they were a lot older. And I remember somehow this topic came up and we went, eventually they took me to some sort of like sex toy store. We all went to go and visit the sex toy store somewhere in New York, and I ended up buying my first vibrator. And so I was really excited because I'm like, this must be the golden solution to my problem of not being able to have orgasms. And so I remember starting to explore with the vibrator and having this release feeling finally. So I'm like, oh my God, this is amazing. This feels great. It was always very short-lived. I remember that as well. So it was always like, and then like almost this like little sneeze and this like tingling sensation, and then a let go, a drop. And what started happening though, the more I started using the vibrator, the more I needed the vibrator, and the more I needed like really like faster speeds, the more I needed more stimulation, the more and more that became not enough, and I needed more like stimulation. So I started watching certain kind of porn. And so like it took me down a path where yes, I was now able to have orgasms, but they were really forced. They were really influenced by external things I was watching, like had input. And so they were really linked to a certain kind of like porn, I remember starting to watch more and more kind of almost violent porn or scenes, because I noticed that if I was watching at like something more normal, I just saw women like being in pleasure, but I didn't really feel them. It felt like they were not being authentic, and I couldn't connect to that. So I went to more like BDSM kind of porn, because at least I saw real emotion. Sometimes women even tearing up or being in pain, and almost that like helped me to have an orgasm faster, because at least I saw real emotion. And so for me, that's like how my orgasm started being programmed. So actually, it's interesting to notice that the way you orgasm is programmed. And it's like it becomes a certain pathway in your system connected to your brain that like this leads to that pleasure output. And this is funny, like our system is designed, like it loves pleasure, it loves dopamine, it loves to have this like little kick. And so when it finds a pathway, it will lock that in of like, this is the fastest way to that. However, sometimes the way we program those are not in a very healthy way or in a way that actually gives a lot of fulfilling. It's just that quick dopamine or that quick pleasure release. And then, that's kind of it. And again, this is also linked to our instinctual nature. There's been this experiment, I believe Sarita mentions it sometimes, where they did an experiment with rats, and they basically like the part of the brain that's there to have that orgasm trigger, they basically like connected to that and were able to give the rat like through the brain an orgasm, that feeling of orgasm. And it would like have two options in the sense of it could eat or it could press the trigger to have an orgasm. And so basically what ended up happening is that the rat kept on pressing orgasm button, orgasm button, orgasm button, orgasm button until it died. And so what this shows in the sense of that our instinctual biology nature can be sometimes hacked in the sense of when we get addicted to something, like we tend to be very addictive to things. And so that's why bringing awareness and presence into it and mindfulness into it, having this ability to zoom out and not just rely on our instinctual nature. So when I was mentioning before, we really connect and embrace our instinctual nature. That means we bring, as I mentioned, that awareness, that presence into it. It's not just randomly connecting to it. So for example, you have streams more that teach about sexuality. Sometimes they're called Tantra, but they're not per se Tantra because they're focused on sexuality. You will learn about your sexuality, but what you most likely won't do is connect meditation to sexuality. And so Tantra, something can be called Tantra if it contains two components, which is the feminine, which is love and devotion, and meditation and witnessing consciousness and awareness. And so when we dive fully into sexuality and we have more sacred sexuality practice, nothing wrong with it, because yes, it can teach you a lot. However, the next step, what actually is key, is to bring more presence, meditation, consciousness, awareness into it, because from there you stop being a slave of just your like random desires and attractions that constantly happens. And yes, you might now be able to consciously talk about it and be open about it, which is a big step. Like that's definitely a step that I took in my journey personally. But the next step out of that is, okay, now we're going to use that energy for different purposes in our life, and we stop being just focused on sex, and we actually start to understand that it offers the potential, it offers the motor, the drive to make all aspects of your life in a way pleasurable and alive, and it is there to motor this transformation into this full realization, this full enlightenment, this full pure bliss of being alive. Now, to come back to orgasms being programmable, that also means that you can actually deprogram and reprogram. So when you don't like the way that you're orgasming, then basically you can start this journey of reprogramming that pathway to bliss and that pathway to orgasm. This is something I actually started doing, which I'll dive in a moment. But I was in this journey where, okay, my orgasms were now programmed to be with a vibrator and to be with certain kind of porn, and I couldn't do it without. And then at some point around, I was 18, 19, I really had my first, I've had sex before that, but never had an orgasm with any of those men. And so I was already a little bit confused on that, but I don't know, there was a lot of sexual energy and I was very excited always about sex. So I still had a great time. Then I got my first partner, like my first real relationship. And well, we were making love a lot, and still like at the beginning, I wasn't really focused on this. It was more just like we were just in love and making love all the time, and so much energy and passion and just love making for hours. Yes, I wouldn't really orgasm, but I would have a great time and it would be really juicy. So I wasn't really too worried about it. And in my self-pleasure practice, I would have my orgasms, but slowly over time, like, I don't know, his focus also was like, I want to give you pleasure. I want to give you orgasms. Are you orgasming? And so there were this like whole performance thing started happening, or this goal orientedness started happening. And this is where I slowly started putting a lot of pressure on myself of like, okay, I'm not orgasming with him. And he would really love me to orgasm. He gets sad and starts doubting if he's even good. I don't want that because I love being with him. I love the sex that we're having. I'm not too worried about it, but now I start worrying about it though, and maybe there is something wrong with me. And I didn't tell him about my vibrator and my the certain kind of porn that I was watching. So this basically this shame and this like doubt and these worries and this feeling of like there's something wrong with me. This is actually shame. So shame is like this feeling of like I am a mistake instead of I made a mistake, because that we're more easily to admit. That's more guilt. So shame is really this internalized feeling of like there is something wrong with me. I'm a mistake, like I'm broken. And this is what I started internalizing. And from there, I went down a path where I started faking pleasure and faking orgasms, because I was like, well, at least he gets happy because like he feels, because I believe he's amazing and I'm having a great time, but he doesn't because I don't have that physical orgasm happening and he can't get me there. I can't get me there. So, so then if I, this is not like a conscious decision that I make. And this is for many women. You might have, like, I do know that actually there's also been research done on how many percent of women have faked orgasms. And it's a lot of them. So if you're one of those, like, I feel you. I've been in that same space. And often it's not this conscious decision that we take. It's just like it slowly happens because we lose awareness, we lose presence, we lose connection there. And we start internalizing this feeling of like, well, having this pressure of performance and not wanting to make the other person feel bad. And basically we start creating it as something that's outside of us. So our sexuality and orgasmicness becomes something more external and not something that actually is something deeply divine and a deeply sacred experience within your own body for you initially, only you initially. And then of course you can share that with someone else. And if you both share it together, it can be something even more like connecting and powerful and divine. However, it always starts with you. And when we put it outside of us and we start creating this performance mindset, that's when it goes really downhill. So I was on a massive downhill, became like the best actress, porn star, because I would see those women do that too. So I had that imprint. He, I believe, fully believed it or was not aware of it. And and that for a while that was okay until, but this is the thing again, if you keep a secret, if you're not fully connected, if something, shameful, it's like a tiny contraction in your body because you're not fully in alignment, fully honest with yourself. And that's never healthy. It always leads to a closing of your system. And so at some point in that relationship, this came up, this feeling of like, I want to break free. I had attractions to other people, which I didn't understand. I was probably so sexually frustrated because instead of having a lot of orgasms, I was faking them. So I wasn't honest with myself, really frustrated with me, projecting that onto him. So, it was quite a sad story. And eventually that relationship ended up finishing, not just because of this issue, but because of just multiple things. If you're not fully open and authentic with your partner at some point, that will lead to most likely a meltdown of the relationship. So at some point it felt also like our paths kind of went a different way. Now, then I came out of that relationship and then I had this okay, I just want to be free and I want to explore. I want to understand what's happening to my body. I want to have all the pleasures. Maybe it was just my partner that I couldn't have it with, must be possible with other men. And I just need a man that can dominate me and control me, basically the porn that I used to be watching, because that must be the way to me having orgasms with a partner. Yes, I was still having them with a vibrator, but I wanted them to have them with a partner. And I believe actually during my relationship, a little jump back, there was maybe a few times where we started introducing the vibrator also in a relationship, and I was able to get myself to an orgasm, but it was a long journey. It was very difficult because I didn't have the porn input. I had my partner, which is a very different kind of feeling and connection. And so like, even when I thought like, oh, I'm bringing a vibrator into our connection, I was brave enough to share that with him, and we used it and he liked it. And we used other like vibrating tools and things. I still wouldn't get there. So it was really this downward spiral of like disappointment in myself, in everything. So I came out of that and was like, okay, I just need this really controlling, dominant man that just like ties me up and spanks me, and then I get to surrender. So someone else needs to make me surrender. So here I went on an exploration journey, different kinds of partners. And of course, when you set an intention, when you're like, I want to learn about this, you always start attracting people, workshops, training, situations that will invite you to learn and grow through that, to actually learn about it. So I went on a few years of having different sort of partners, and more eventually I started traveling and started attracting partners that were like into shibari, for example, which is like the Japanese bondage. So you get tied up, or that were more into like spanking, and that were way more open in their sexuality. So I went down that path, and somewhere down the line I have this memory that I started learning about, for example, squirting orgasms. But I was like, well, that must be like somewhere where I'm definitely not close to. But however, I had this experience. I think it was like at some point with someone making love in a pool, which means like your yoni is filled with water. And then eventually we went to the bed, and like there was a lot of water coming out, and I think he believed I was squirting, so he was super excited, and I was like, oh my god, I was super excited, I'm doing this thing. And again, it was all so mind-based, and bless her, my older version, like, I love you. She got me here eventually. And well, what that did though was interesting, because my sexuality was so mind-based and not connected to my body whatsoever. At that point, I was like, I started believing, this is how funny how thoughts work. I started believing that I can have this more G-spot squirting orgasm. So from there, actually with new partners that I was with, this started to become possible. I was able to have this more G-spot orgasm, this more internal, with a lot of like juice being released. And so I was like, oh my god, I can be orgasmic with men. And so for a while that became kind of the thing, but it again turned a little bit in this performance, because now there's this waterfall and this like, wow, like this whole thing, and men were really excited about it, because also now they physically like really confirm she had an orgasm. And so that still didn't really fix my problem, or the thing, the certain pathway I had to bliss. Like it was amazing to experience that and to have more full body activation. And this is also around the time where I started attracting partners that were more connected to this ability to have full body energy activation and full body pleasure. And that was very interesting to me though, because that started leading me onto a path where the focus kind of dropped away from needing to reach a peak or a goal, but you could basically just allow energy to flow in a different way and activate more the full body sensation of something. I wasn't really sure what it was. And so, but I kind of allowed myself to dive into that and to explore and to start opening my system up more. And as it will start shaking and started moving a little bit during lovemaking, sometimes with a partner, and it became more energetic, which was super fascinating. And so this was around the time when I started to learn more about Kundalini energy and full body orgasms, but still on a physical level, I was struggling to have that with partners more from a purely clitoral, like peak orgasm sensation. Now, eventually I dove fully into Tantra and into trainings and online courses and learning so much about this, which is where I started deep programming and letting go. It was a process, because it was basically an addiction to vibrator, to let go of the vibrator and started using my hands. And to really, one of the keys actually was to learn to drop the goal. So stop having this this fixation of like, I need to reach this, I need to reach something. And specifically for the feminine, for women, the feminine is all about, doesn't have goals. Like the masculine principle has goals, has his direction, and needs to get somewhere. The feminine is the opposite of that. It enjoys itself fully in just by being in flow, by being fully present and connected. And for really deep states of pleasure and orgasmicness, it's actually key that you let go of trying to get there. And I often use this example of Harry Potter. I'm a big Harry Potter fan too. And there is this scene in the first Harry Potter. It's a little bit weird to compare Harry Potter with sexuality and orgasms, but still, like, it always really worked for me, is that at the very end of the first movie, he's trying to get this stone, or like the bad guy is trying to get the stone. And then there is the stone is inside of the mirror. However, the mirror is programmed in such a way that you can't get the stone if you want it. Only if you have no desire for it, only if you're completely like goalless, then the mirror will give you the stone. And so the bad guy is all frustrated standing in front of the mirror, can't get the stone. Then Harry Potter walks in and he doesn't have the desire or the intention to want or do anything with the stone or need it. And so he ends up receiving the stone. So basically, this is similar when it comes to orgasmicness, but specifically the feminine orgasm, but also specifically when it comes to full body orgasmicness and really, awakening this full body energy activation and pleasure. It's key that you drop this goal, which can be a little bit of a mind fuck on where to start, but it really starts by becoming connected to your body, by being present, by dropping into this moment. And that's basically what I started practicing, just purely self-pleasuring or connecting with myself, masturbating without a goal, without trying to get to an orgasm, actually for a while taking the goal fully out of the equation, out of the picture. And this took a while, and actually there's a specific way to deprogram. My Tantra teacher described this to me, is where you would use, instead of just going cold turkey straight away, so instead of straight away dropping the vibrator or anything that you're addicted to, you use that to get into high pleasure states. But before reaching the actual goal where that addictive behavior gets you to, you stop. And that's when you go into the movement or the action of the new program that you want in its place. And so this takes a lot of willpower and awareness and dedication, because when you're on that path to pleasure, it can be very you lose often your awareness and the presence, and you just want to go to that goal. But however, you have to build it up, use that same thing to get to a really high state of pleasure. Then you put it away, you take it away, and then you start, putting in place the new kind of behavior. So I wanted to really just be able to do it with my hands, first step. And I wanted to also not having to be rough or anything. I wanted to be very sensitive and soft. So I would do that. And then what would happen is then I would not reach the goal, I would drop again. And so then I would use the vibrator again to build up the pleasure before almost reaching that peak, then putting in that new program. So in the beginning, that process is quite frustrating, because you most likely won't reach that goal as fast as you could, and you know you could. So you have to really use that dedication and that willpower. But then slowly over time, your body will start to get the cue that you're programming in something else. And so this is how I went on this journey of being able to give myself this more clitoral orgasm with my hands. But also I went at some point on this, I remember after a year of traveling, I had 2 months in Spain by myself, and I went on this full exploration journey, because now I had this squirting orgasm, this different type of feeling and orgasmicness unlocked with a few sexual partners, but I've never had that within my own by doing that by myself. So I was like, wait, but if someone else can do this to me, I must be able to do this and feel and experience this with myself. So I went on this kind of full self-pleasure journey to explore. And this is also super important, actually, to explore your own body. That's where it starts, especially if you want to share this with a partner. It's key that you explore it with your own body first, because your sexuality is something inherent within your own system, and it's something for you. It's something very special and personal, an experience that you're having with yourself and within your own body. So always I recommend to start there. And that's also the approach that we take in our Tantra school when it comes to learning to have full body orgasmicness, is energy activation, is learning to activate that within yourself, and not, again, as I mentioned, someone trying to do that to you, or it needing per se outside help, because it is something that you can lock within your own system. Everyone can. However, it requires a different shift of mindset, and that's what I'll be diving into now. Is there's basically two flows of energy within your system, and two flows of sexual energy. One of those flows is down and out. And this is the flow of energy that most of us know. So when we have an orgasm, or for men specifically, when they ejaculate, the energy goes all the way towards the root and then comes out in physical ejaculation. But also for women, this is more when we have this kind of like this peak orgasmic feeling where, okay, this build up, and then there's this physical sensation, energy goes down and out. So there's nothing wrong with that. In that way, the energy flows for a specific reason, which is the main intention at the very core of your system is for procreation. So like our system is designed to have that down and out energy flow so we can actually be able to get pregnant and to procreate and create a new human. And again, at the very root is this biological nature and principle to do that. However, what we're not taught, but which is definitely part of us, of every single person, is our more spiritual nature. So whether you believe in spirituality, yes or no, like to me at this point, when people say I'm just not that spiritual, I'm like, that's basically impossible because you're a human. So you have an instinctual nature and you have a spiritual nature. But I think also we're taught this more woohoo perspective on spirituality. Well, actually it can be something really grounded. And it's basically your if you're looking at yin and yang or masculine, feminine, like there's always this duality in life. So one can't come without the other. It's the same here, like your instinctual nature and spiritual nature, they're opposite sides of the same coin. And so in Tantra, we actually have this saying, sex and samadhi are one. Sex representing your instinctual nature, it's the root chakra, and samadhi being the crown chakra. This like samadhi is this sense of finding the ultimate truth, this ultimate bliss of enlightenment, of this full realization of the self, this full divine like space of nothingness. And they say sex and samadhi, they're basically one. That's because they're like opposite sides of the same coin. So they're always coming hand in hand. So if you're saying I'm not that spiritual, I would actually want to say that's bullshit, but you can keep on believing that until hopefully at some point you decide to be like, wait, but there might be more to life. And specifically, this is more so the instinctual nature can be seen more as like masculine, it's goal oriented, it's driven, it wants to procreate. And the spiritual nature is more feminine, which is actually the reason why one of the reasons why the feminine women are often initiating men onto this path, because their nature is more connected to the instinctual root, and the feminine nature is more connected to the spiritual aspect of life. So anyways, that was a little detour, got a little feisty there, but sex and samadhi are one. So your sex and spirit, like spirituality and sexuality, are really connected. And this is where, okay, we have this down and out energy flow, but we also have this in and up energy flow. So instead of from the root, the energy goes down for procreation or for pleasure. Again, nothing wrong. It's just like you have more parts. And the more you know about yourself and all of these possibilities, the more you can choose when to use what. And that's when you become empowered. By only being like taught about down and out energy flow, you become easily controllable, and you become disempowered basically because you're missing half of your potential. So you can invite the energy also inwards and upwards. And this is one of the keys to start understanding this and unlocking this for full body orgasms. So then the pleasure doesn't just stay down. Actually, you're able to invite that pleasure energy in and up through your entire system. And so specifically around Kundalini energy, sexual energy, life force energy, Kundalini energy, they're all the same creative energy. They're just different names for the exact same phenomena, the exact same energy. And like specifically in Taoist perspectives or Chinese medicine principles, what they what they're based on, what they believe is that your sexual health, so the state of your sexual energy, which is also the state of your life force energy. So it's just basically the amount of aliveness you have in your system, the amount of life that you have in your system, is an essential indicator for your overall health. Because this lies at the very root, at the very foundation. When this is off, when this is not looked at, then everything else, which is built on top of that, is like almost built like this cart house that can drop down in every moment because it doesn't have a solid foundation. So if you want to create a solid, grounded feeling of a sense of inner safety and security in your life, a sense of confidence of just like, hey, no matter what, I got myself, I also this ability to be alive, to create, then you'll have to dive into understanding and learning about your sexuality, your root, the very base and primal aspect of your being, to create that solid foundation to build on. So energy flows in and up. So Kundalini energy, sometimes it's depicted or described as this coiled snake at the base of your spine. Because what the snake represents is the feminine. A symbol for the feminine is the snake, and the feminine energy is this sexual life force, creative energy, this like energy that always moves and dances and creates and feels and connects to pleasure and aliveness. And then the masculine aspect is that foundation, is that presence, is that container in which the feminine can create in itself. So you need both. But specifically the Kundalini energy is depicted as this coiled snake. So basically it lies curled up at the very base of your spine, at the very root, and waiting to be basically unlocked so it can travel up, and then it travels up basically along your spine. That's the image that it gets. And that's basically when we talk about Kundalini awakening or Kundalini rising, is when that energy, that sexual life force energy, that snake, starts moving inwards and upwards. And that's when you access different intention of what you can use sexual energy for. So I said there's like a framework. Actually, I believe Modestus created this, and he's also going to write a book about this subject. I hope he does it soon, because it's so important for people to know about, is that you have basically 5 different intentions or uses for sexual energy, which is procreation, pleasure. You have more for inspiration, for creation, and for healing and transformation. And so when you allow the sexual energy to go in and up, that's when you can start using it for healing, for transformation, for creating, for calling in abundance, for manifesting, for attracting things, and for, just feeling really inspired in your life and inspiring others as well. Now, one of the keys for that energy to be able to rise inwards and upwards, we call it in Tantra as having this open central channel. So you want this sense of openness in your body. You can imagine that snake being this water hose, and everyone probably has a water hose at home. And if it has all these kinks in it, then when you turn the tap open, it will start like moving like all around and being super chaotic, and like the water flowing and the water hose going left, right, and center. And so this is actually one of the reasons why we say, or in this school also, we don't like do Kundalini awakenings or Kundalini awakening practices specifically in the sense of we're going now to open your Kundalini. Like all the practices are more of an invitation and to tune in with your system is where it's at and working with that. Plus it's about like taking away those kinks, because then naturally the energy will be able to rise, like it's there. So instead of trying to force it, because again, if we just force it open, we put the water open and you're not ready for it, or your system is not open, that central channel is not, you don't have this sense of openness and fluidity in your body, then it becomes this chaotic power of water and stream, which is very hard to control, and then it becomes often confusing for people. So instead, it's essential to remove all those kinks out of the water hose. And in order to do so, what is actually key and what comes hand in hand with being able to experience full body orgasms is the ability to connect to your emotions and have this emotional fluidity in your body. So being able, because emotions are energy in motion, to move the energy within your system. So being fluid in your emotions is essential when it comes to experiencing more pleasure, experiencing full body orgasms, because you basically invite your entire system to feel. Without you feeling, like, that's not going to ever happen. So being emotionally fluid and being able to transmute your emotions, I call this, we have this process of emotional alchemy, is essential. In order to do that, you need to be connected to your body. And we have these components of breath, movement, sound that we work with, because breath, movement, sound are essential to become emotionally fluid and also to become fully orgasmic. Because imagine, like, the best orgasms you've ever had in your life most likely were not when you were in your head, when you were tight and contracted, and when you were like barely breathing. No, most likely you were breath, like like breathing deeply, making sound, pleasure sounds, opening up, surrendering into it. And you were moving your body in such a way. You most likely weren't like a still little puppy trying to have like an orgasm. No, that will automatically lead to this like stressful peak kind of situation. And then you use orgasmicness, where orgasm becomes almost like a sleeping pill, like something you do just 5 minutes before bed and then just fall asleep. So, emotional fluidity is essential. So we remove those kinks out of the hose and we create this ability to surrender, to open up, to move energy. And that's when you can start easily inviting energy to flow inwards and upwards. It's really a process of allowing and of surrender. And this might sound really like complicated or something, but it actually is not. When me and Modestus were doing last month a 21-day challenge of 2 specific Tantra meditations. You might have seen me mention that on my Instagram. One was the Osho dynamic meditation. One was the Osho Kundalini meditation. I didn't really explain much about that one, but that's actually a beautiful practice. It's very yin, actually, a very yin way of connecting and understanding and awakening this Kundalini energy and allowing energy from the earth to basically rise into your body inwards and upwards. And so, if you ever want to start somewhere, Osho Kundalini meditation is really, really beautiful. But when I work with women, for example, what we often tend to do is we go into different steps. Also, the feminine reset gives you an introduction into this, in the sense of the first steps always are first connecting to your body, then connecting to your emotions, to your sense of feeling, then connecting to the sense of flow and surrender into your system, and then coming to really connecting and awakening this aliveness, this pleasure, this sexual energy, to grounding it. And so the Feminine Reset, my online course, and also I do Feminine Reset personal journeys when we use the online course, but also with one-on-one sessions to guide you more, to go deeper into it. It's specifically designed to connect you to all these different aspects that are basically key and essential to just come more alive in your body and to connect to all these different flavors of the feminine, and to basically create that foundation, because the first 3 steps before connecting to the sexual energy more, the sexual energy flow, are what I just mentioned, the essential components of, like, you need to be in your body, you need to be emotionally fluid in the sense of able to start feeling more, because that's one of the keys. Without feeling, there's nothing else to feel. And to be able to flow and surrender and open up also your heart, really essential. Then awakening that aliveness, allowing that to, dropping the goal, awakening your entire system. And from there, also learning again to invite that energy to come back, in a sense of grounding it back in. So this down and out energy flow, we can see it only from the root down and out, but we also have this principle in Tantra called the descent of grace. So when you fully open this central channel, energy can run from the core all the way up top, connects that spiritual aspect, samadhi, to sex. Then basically from there, our system is open, and that's actually the real reason of awakening Kundalini or activating full body energy activation. Is, yes, of course, it's amazing to feel more pleasure in your life and in your body. Like, that's a perfect start. Definitely start there. And you can take it even further, because the real intention is, if you have this open system, then you become this open channel, almost like this hollow bamboo for divine universal blessings and energy, we call it the descent of grace, to drop from the crown back down through that system all the way towards the root. And the root is the physical nature, like the physical, like real life, the human life being here on earth instead of like floating around. But in that way, we become possible to let all those blessings, the love, the abundance that the universe has to offer, that like spirit has to offer, we are allowed that to drop down all the way back into the physical world. So we can actually, it's basically the key to abundance. Like my Tantra teacher mentioned this once, like the key to abundance is having this open central channel, this open system. So this hollow vessel. So being able to, use that energy to go in and up, connect, and then invite that energy to go back all the way down. So you can say, oh, this is too woohoo energetical, but imagine like this is the way to call in your manifestations and let them become like heaven on earth. We say that, we have that saying, right? Like heaven on earth. This is the way to create heaven on earth. So I would say that's a very exciting potential, which is for many of us completely unexplored, and which is super sad. But hopefully this podcast inspired you to be like, I need to learn more about this. This is super exciting. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. Now, before you tune out, if you felt inspired, enjoyed listening, had some beautiful insights, I would really highly appreciate it if you could leave me a 5-star review or share the episode with a friend or on your social medias. Also, as always, please feel free to reach out to me with any questions or anything you would like to share. You can do so on my Instagram at DiekeTerWeel. That is DIEKETERWEEL. Also, if you're curious on how to work with me, then make sure to check out the information in the podcast description. And for now, I hope to see you in the next one.